Hello everyone. So today we will be closing the P block elements, the last bit of that, that is the inner halogen compounds and the 18th group, that is the noble gas elements. The noble gas elements are, you have to study only very little, only some reactions you have to study, that's all, because it is stable, no? So there is no so many reactions in noble gas. So today we will be closing the P block, which is a lengthy one, which was a lengthy one. So now we will see the interhalogen compounds. It is very, very important. Okay, interhalogen compounds, and then we will go to the 18th group. So what do you mean by interhalogen compounds? Interhalogen compound means between the halogens compounds are taken, isn't it? So between the halogens means, for example, you know halogens chlorine, fluorine, chlorine, bromine, iodine. So between these halogens compounds are formed. For example, ClF, BrF, isn't it? Then IF, etc., ICl, etc. So these are called as interhalogen compounds. Okay, the compounds which are making between halogen atoms is called as interhalogen compounds. Now we will see how this reaction takes place, or how the interhalogen compounds can be prepared. It can be prepared by the direct combination of these halogens. Direct combination, that means fluorine plus chlorine on direct combination, but there may be some conditions. For example, there may be some temperature for which the reaction has to happen. Now we will see how it makes. And before that, as we already discussed, there are 4 kinds of interhalogen compounds, isn't it? Like X dash, then X dash 3, X dash 5, and X dash 7. Odd numbers. To remember very easily, it will be odd numbers, isn't it? And also I told you that X dash will be a smaller, very, very important, smaller halogen atom, and X will be a higher means larger, not higher, it should be a larger halogen atom. This is a criteria for making interhalogen compounds like X dash, X dash 3, X dash 5, and X dash 7. Want an example for X dash? I can see ICl, X dash 1 and 1, isn't it? For X dash 3, I can say BrF3. Simply, just an example. X dash 5, BrF5. See? And X dash 7, IF7. See? These are the simple examples of interhalogen compounds which are making by these formulas. And you know, as the radius increases, see, this is, as we already told, that this is a smaller atom and this is a larger size atom. This is a smaller size atom. Now, if the radius is increased, for example, if this is a big atom and this is a small atom, isn't it? So, if the radius is increased from this atoms, combination of these halogens, you can have more number of atoms in that compound. For example, IF7, see, I being a bigger one and fluorine being a very small one. So since the radius increased due to this formation of this compound, because one is small and other is high, the radius is increased, you can have a compound like IF7. F7 fluorine atoms can be made into this iodine atom to form an interhalogen compounds like IF7. So that is the peculiarity of this. Increasing the radius, you can have 7 numbers, but BrF7 and IF7 is not there, since the radius is decreased in that case. So as far as the radius is increased, you can have 7 atoms in this iodine, making this atom IF7. Okay. Now we will see how it is prepared, how interhalogen compounds can be prepared. Okay. It's very, very simple. As I already told you, this is prepared by the direct combination. Direct means what? Simply putting it together, that's all, and giving some condition. Okay. For example, the first one, fluorine plus chlorine, what you will get? You will get ClF. Now why I put ClF and not FCl? You know, this is a case of X dash, and already told you X dash must be a smaller, or we can again say a more electronegative. See, always the more electronegative atom comes at the end, isn't it? Or the right hand side. For example, OF2. Whatever be the case, HCl. In all the cases while in a compound formation, the higher electronegative will be on the right hand side or rightest. Okay, so in that case we can write ClF. Now ClF means if this is equal volumes of, when you take equal volumes of fluorine and chlorine. Okay, so this is called as a direct combination, and this is having a temperature of 437 Kelvin. So just you have to note down this temperature. If a question is asked, if you don't write the temperature, you will be losing marks. So that is the peculiarity of this this reaction. This is condition reactions. Conditions means, you know, temperature, pressure, etc. So here the temperature must be put. Now in second reaction is when F2 plus chlorine again will give you, and since chlorine is in excess, or if you take chlorine in excess, you can have fluorine is in excess. Okay, fluorine is in excess, you can have ClF3. See, this is just a logic. If fluorine is excess, you can have ClF3. If it is an equal amount, ClF. You can remember like that. Okay, so if it is an equal volume, you will get the monohalide. If it is fluorine is in excess, you can have ClF3. And this is also the temperature is 573 Kelvin. Just note it down. 573 Kelvin. Only these two have temperatures. Others don't have temperatures. So it is easy for remembering. Only two have temperature, and that too chlorine and fluorine interhalogen compound. Okay. So please remember this temperature. Okay. Even though it will come around, if you don't know the correct thing, just you have an approximation, right? This is 437. So you can approximate to 400 or something like that. And this is 573. Okay. You know 273 is our 0 degree Kelvin. So we just connect it with that. Okay, 573. So this is about the fluorine. Okay, chlorine compounds. Now again we can have another one, the same one, fluorine plus bromine will give you in equal volume, you will get BRF, isn't it? BRF. Or I can say I2 plus Br2 will give you IBr, because Br is small, so I will come here, so IBr. See? So this is how you can prepare the compounds. Okay. So please study 2 or 3, you can write it your own. So equal amount ClF, excess it is ClF3. In the same way we can write bromine plus fluorine plus bromine will give you BRF, or iodine plus chlorine will give you ICl. Now if fluorine is in excess, you can have IF7, isn't it? So IF7. So we will have one. Again one more reaction in the case of iodine. See, you know iodine plus chlorine in equal volume you will get ICl. In the same way as fluorine and chlorine. And iodine plus chlorine, if the chlorine is in excess, you will get ICl3. See, the same reaction as we covered in the fluorine and chlorine this thing. Okay. Now if you say bromine, for bromine, see, bromine plus fluorine, when it is diluted with water, see, when it is diluted with water, you will get BrF3. And again, Br plus F2 will have BrF5. So here it should be in excess. See, these are the equations you have to study in interhalogen compounds. Two things they are easy, that is iodine and chlorine and fluorine and chlorine. They are same, ditto. That means equal amount you will get what? ICl and ClF. Then if chlorine is in excess, you will get what? Here it is ICl3 and the other one is ClF3. Same, ditto, no change. Only bromine you have to have a little more cautious. That means bromine bromine plus fluorine. The condition is it should be diluted with water. Then you will get BrF3. And if you want BrF5, the fluorine has to be in excess. That also is easy. Now in fluorinating thing, you can have two temperatures. The first one for ClF is, remember it, 437. And ClF3, it is 573. See, I have made it like ulta, 73. Just remember like that. It is 573 for the second one, and 4, if I remember like that, 573 is for the second one and 473. No, it may be ulta, that is 437. So, like some tricks you can have in your mind, how you can remember the temperatures. So, like that you should have a connectivity in that. Okay. So, these are the reactions by which interhalogen compounds can be prepared. It's easy. Now, coming to the properties. Okay, coming to the properties, you know interhalogen compounds means two halogen compounds when have a direct combinations and having some conditions. Okay. Now, mainly these interhalogen compounds are covalent in nature. Okay, covalent in nature. Okay, sharing takes place and covalent in nature, and almost all are diamagnetic in nature. What do you mean by diamagnetic? Diamagnetic means they have paired electrons, isn't it? Paired electrons. So they don't show magnetism. If some compound having paramagnetic, that means they contain unshared electrons. So they will show magnetism. So this means all paired. All paired. So it won't show any magnetic property. Okay, that is the meaning of that. We will study in coordination more about that. Okay. So normally it is having a covalent molecule. It exists as a covalent molecule, and it is diamagnetic in nature. Okay. And almost all the compounds are solids. I mean solids and liquids. Okay. Almost all, and only exception is the ClF is a gas or gaseous in nature. Just an exception you to study. That is ClF is a gaseous in nature. Okay, it is a gas. Just see the exceptions you have to study or note it down on the left hand side of your textbook, so that you can easily come to know. Okay, easily your eyes will get into that. If you have all the exceptions and very important points on the left hand, because in your textbook you are having a very good textbook, like you have some space in the left hand side, so you can have the all the points to be there, or you have to stick some paper in there having all the points. Okay, that is up to you, whatever you have to keep in mind. Okay. Now so coming to the properties, almost all are covalent in nature. Then diamagnetic, first is covalent in nature, by if you have a point wise. Second is diamagnetic in nature, that means all are paired electrons, so there no magnetism is there. The third is almost all are solids and liquids, but only exception is in ClF, chlorofluoride, that is gaseous in nature. But when coming to the physical properties of these interhalogen compounds, you know, physical property means normally we talk about the solubility and then the melting and boiling point, etc. Now, if you say take an example of ICl or ClF, these are interhalogen compounds. Now, the physical property, when you talk about the physical property, all physical properties will come intermediate between both the halogens. For example, if iodine is a halogen and chlorine is another halogen, if you put together you will get the interhalogen ICl. Correct. Now, when we talk about the physical properties like melting point, melting point, boiling point, solubility, nature, etc., it must come intermediate between these two. It will be neither that of iodine and nor that of chlorine, but it will be an intermediate between this iodine and the chlorine, or chlorine and fluorine, or bromine and fluorine. So that is a general trend. But here also there is one exception. What is that exception? The melting point and boiling point, listen very carefully, the melting point and the boiling point of these interhalogen compounds are little bit higher than what they expected. Listen, this melting and dP of the interhalogen compounds are little bit higher than what they expected. They are expecting an intermediate between these two, but they are getting the value little bit higher than what they have expected. Now, why that happens? The reason is very simple. The logic is, see, if you talk about halogen itself, iodine and chlorine. Okay. Now from these two you are getting ICl. Just an example. I am illustrating with an example. Okay. Now you are telling, or we are telling, this ICl, the interhalogen compounds, the MP and BP is little bit increased or higher than what you are expected from this normal case. Why? Because see, in the case of an ICl, and if you take II bond and ClCl bond and ICl bond, here two have same atom, iodine or chlorine, but here different atoms. Now see the electronegativity in this. What is the electronegativity of I2 and Cl2? Since it is same atom, the electronegativity is 0, isn't it? But what about ICl? ICl is, the chlorine is more electronegative than iodine, so there is little bit of force of attraction of this electronegativity. Due to the electronegativity, there is some attraction taking place here. So in order to break that, boiling point is fixed. So got the point? So due to the electronegativity difference, this is having a small higher rate of boiling point or MP when considered with the normal case. So got that logic or reason? Okay. So that is physical property. Only the exception is about the melting and the boiling point. Okay. Now we are coming to the reactivity of interhalogen compounds. The board exam, usual question for the board exam. Interhalogen compounds are highly reactive. See, it is highly reactive in nature. Which means, example, board exam question is asked, ICl is more reactive than I2. Give reason. One more question. Why ICl is more reactive than I2? And what will be the reason? Reason is, you know, if you want to be any compound, see, it is a simple logic. Whenever a compound is more reactive, that means the reason behind is this bond can be easily broken. Then only it will come into respective atoms and go for the reaction. As far as the bond is stable, isn't it? And the bond is stable or the bond dissociation enthalpy is very high, that is very high because it is highly stable, nitrogen, then iodine, etc. It won't break down or dissociation happens only low. So in this case, since you have to write the value point as, since the XX dash bond is weaker, isn't it? The XX dash bond is weaker than this X2 bond. Weaker bond, when the bond will be weaker, the bond dissociation enthalpy is weaker, isn't it? So the XX dash or the ICl bond is weaker. If we have a particular example, we can write ICl bond is weaker than I2. The ICl is more reactive than I2. This is the value point. So any interhalogen compounds they can ask. Just I wrote it one that's it. BRF or IF, anything. So the point is the interhalogen compounds are having bond weaker than the normal halogens. But there is also an exception for this. That is the fluorine-fluorine bond. When you compare the fluorine-fluorine bond, it is the bond dissociation. We have studied in the last session. The bond dissociation enthalpy of fluorine is very, very low. Isn't it? Why? Due to the small size, isn't it? The small size and the electron repulsion from both these p orbitals of this fluorine atom. So exception is the fluorine-fluorine or the fluorine molecule, but rest all other you can have the interhalogen compounds are more reactive than halogens except fluorine. You have an exception here, except the fluorine-fluorine bond. Got it? So these are the some of the examples of interhalogen compounds. Okay. Now we will see a reaction with the water. All the interhalogen compounds are readily hydrolyzed. That is it. It is readily hydrolyzed. Hydrolyzed means what? Hydrolyzed means the reaction with water. This is also important. Only little bit. So you know, see, there is a trick in studying this. You have to note it down. That means, for example, you have an interhalogen compound, you have 4 types, X, X dash, isn't it? Plus water. 2 types of compounds are there, listen. 2 types of compounds are there, in which one is HX, that is, if it is, you know, X dash. See, the smaller halogen atom, listen very carefully, the smaller halogen atom will go straight away to form the hydrogen. A strong affinity for hydrogen. That is, it will form, if it is, for example, just an example I will write, ClF plus water will give you H and F. That is, the smaller hydrogen will go for the H. That is, straight away it will come as HF plus the rest is HOCl. See? Got it? So, in every case it is the same. So, please remember, this X dash being a smaller halogen will always get along with H to form HF in all the 4 cases. In all the 4 compounds or interhalogen compounds, the smaller halogen atom will be connected with the hydrogen to form HX. And the HOCl or the next, what is it? Plus HOX. The X will be connected to the OH. That is different. That is different for the 4 cases. So it will be very easy if you study like this. Like one is X dash plus H2O will give you HX dash. That is same for all the cases. The only difference is HOX. That it will get different. Okay, we will see. The next is XX dash 3. Second one. Now, plus this is 1 H2O. Now here I can write 2 H2O. See the simplicity or a trick behind it. This is 1, then this is 2. Now what happens? This is, as I already told you, there is no other compound. This X dash or the smaller halogen atom will always go and take one hydrogen atom to form the respective acid. That is HX dash. And since it is 3, see XX dash 3, you can very well say it is 3HX dash. Okay, here it is 1, so it is 1. Now here there is a difference. See, here this is what? This is, you have studied in the last session, HOCl. We have studied the structure of hypochlorous acid. What is it? Hypochlorous acid. So this is HOX. Now in the next second case, HOXO. Yesterday we have studied, see if I am connecting it, yesterday we have studied 4 oxo acids, HOCl, correct, HOClO, which I said HClO2, correct. Next is HOClO2, that is HClO3, we have structure, and HOClO3. Are you remembering the structure? The same acid you are getting 1, 2, 3 and 4. That is hypochlorous or hypohalous, then perhalous, halic and perhalic. So these 4 types of acids you are getting along with the hydrogen acid or the hydrogen halogen acid. So it is very easy to remember. You can connect with yesterday's portion. Next is XX-5 and you tell me this is 1, this is 2 and now we can say 3. Listen, 3H2O will give you, directly you can write HX dash, nothing great in that. But if this is 5, then you can put it 5, no problem. But here, you know HOX, then HOXO, which means HClO2. Now what is the next is HOClO2. I can write HOXO2 or you can write HXO3. Anyway, all these 4. Now the last is XX-7 plus C. 1, 2, 3, next is 4. 4H2O will give you same HX dash. Now what is this 7? So you can put very well 7. Plus the last is HOXO3. See? This is a trick behind this. You can have very well. Don't want to mug up. Just write the 4 equations. Then whatever you want the equation, take that, leave the other one. If the question comes in the exam. Okay. So this is about the reaction with water. That means the interhalogen compounds are very well hydrolyzed. It can very readily react with the water. Okay. So this is the explanation, or this is the reaction for this. Hope it is easy for you, right? Now we will see one more thing, the structure. The structure of interhalogen compounds. Okay. Now when you talk about structure, is it okay? Shall I rub this? Okay. Now when you talk about the structure of this interhalogen compounds, structure, you are going back again for a chemical chemical bonding and molecular structure chapter. You have know that VSEPR theory. You have heard so many theories like valence bond theory, then VSEPR theory and MO theory. 3 theories you have to study last year. VBT, valence bond theory, here hybridization comes, molecular orbital theory, that is atomic orbitals to form the molecular orbitals, pi star, you are remembering? Pi star and sigma star, bonding and anti-bonding. Now VSEPR theory is valence shell electron pair repulsion theory. So when interhalogen compound structure, when you talk about that, we just have, according to the VSEPR theory, they are discussing that. Okay. Or the halogen, the structure is dedicated or it is given by the VSEPR theory. And for X dash, it is not fully done. So we just leave it like that. And for X dash 3, it will be a bent T-shaped structure. Actually, it is a trigonal bipyramidal structure, but we call it as a bent T-shaped structure. And we will see one of that structure, BRF3. We will see in detail how you can prove the structure of BRF3 as a bent T-shaped structure or a trigonal bipyramidal structure. Now, when you talk about X5 dash, it is square pyramidal. Okay, it is square pyramidal structure. Just to note down, that's all. And the last one is XX7 dash. It will be a pentagonal. It is a pentagonal bipyramidal structure. Just to keep in mind. Okay. So for XX dash, it is not predicted now. Linear. That's why. Okay. Then X-3 is bent T-shaped or trigonal bipyramidal. X-5 is square pyramidal. And X-7 is pentagonal bipyramidal. So these are the shapes of the interhalogen compounds according to the VSEPR theory. So you got it? This is all about what? The interhalogen compounds. So now you know what are interhalogen compounds. The main points are, it is highly reactive, it is diamagnetic, then it is normally solid and liquid, but the only exception is CLF being a gas. Then very well hydrolyzed, isn't it? Very well hydrolyzed. Then highly reactive, as I told you. Then the shades of that. So there comes the end of the interhalogen compounds. Okay. So one more thing, as I said, I will show you by Vesper theory the structure of BRF3. In board exam, it used to come BRF3 structure. Okay. Now bromine, see, bromine means a halogen. So it is having 7 valence electrons, isn't it? 7 valence electrons. And for fluorine is also 7 valence electrons. Now, according to the VSEPR theory, this is having a trigonal, see, trigonal bipyramidal structure. Look, trigonal bipyramidal structure. Now we will see how the structure comes and how it is stable for a trigonal bipyramidal structure. You know, bromine, you know, it is in the central atom. And what happens is trigonal bipyramidal, no? So I will have a triangle, equilateral triangle, and having bipyramidal means, shall I rub this. Okay. Bipyramidal means like this. Okay. Now we got it right. How? A triangle with one axis like here and one axis like here. That is trigonal bipyramidal. Okay. So what happens is, fluorine is how much? 3 fluorine atoms are there. Okay. No, it is not BrF3. It is Br. Yeah, it is BrF3. Okay. Now, what happens is, see, the fluorine atom, 3 fluorine atoms are there. So, Br will form 3 bond pair with fluorine atom, isn't it? Okay. And there are 2 lone pair of electrons in this. When you go to find out this lone pair and bond pair, there are 3 bond pair with fluorine and 2 lone pair. And you know, these 2 lone pairs are located in the equilateral position. If I draw this, see, it is in the equilateral position, and the fluorine atom is in the 2 fluorine atom is in the axial position. That means axis, isn't it? Axis, and this is equilateral. That means this is in the equilateral triangle, no? So equilateral electrons, and this is axial electrons. So you can say this is equilateral bonds and this is axial bond. In chemical bonding you have studied. This is equilateral bond and this is axial bond. Now why it has a, why it has a bend T-shaped structure? This is a T-shape. You see, fluorine. If I draw like this, fluorine. Can you see? I will draw here. Okay. Here I can draw. This is bromine. This is fluorine. This is fluorine, and this is fluorine. This is a T-shaped structure. Like what is T? It's a T-shaped structure. Now here this is an ulta T, but if you put like this, it's a T-shape, right? Okay. Now it is said that it is having a bend T-shaped structure. Now why this bend T-shaped structure, you know? Here there are 2 lone pair of electrons. Listen carefully. Here there are 2 lone pair of electrons in the equatorial position. Now what happens? This, you know, fluorine is very small and it contains electron repulsion. Very small means electron. So this electron repulsion between this valence bond electrons and this electrons, this has got a slight bending towards here. See? That is why it is called a bend-shaped structure. See? Bend T. Now the T will be like this. It's a bend T. Now the reason behind it is the repulsion due to the lone pair bond pair. You can have the value point. It is due to the repulsion between the lone pair bond pair repulsion of these 2 fluorines on the equatorial position and the axial position. Equatorial position means the lone pair and axial position means the fluorine atom. So due to this, it is having a bend T-shaped structure. So that is how you derive the structure of BrF3 as a trigonal bipyramidal structure, or you can say it is having a bend T-shaped structure. Okay. So that's all about the 17th group, that is the halogen family. Okay. Now we will see the 18th group. What are the, this is very little bit of this thing. Now what, just the 10 properties and just 2 compounds are there. So we will move on to the 18th group. Okay. So we will see the 18th group. Now 18th group are called as what? Noble gas elements, right? You know that 18th group is noble gas elements. Okay. Group 18. Okay. So group 18 are, you know, what are they? Helium, tell me, helium, neon, argon, krypton and xenon. And also radon. Radon being radioactive, we don't discuss much more. Just have a glimpse, that's all. Okay. So this is the group 18 element, and as you all know that they are stable elements. They are stable and they are monoatomic elements. Monoatomic means it doesn't exist as molecules, isn't it? For example, when you talk about halogens, it is fluorine. It exists as fluorine, chlorine, bromine, iodine, hydrogen, oxygen, etc. They are all diatomic molecules. But when you consider the noble gas elements, they are all monoatomic in nature and they are very, very, very stable, isn't it? Which means they have octet. Just an exception is the helium, which is having a duplet. That is only 2 electrons. That also is stable. So all other having octet. So that is very well stable configuration. So nothing much more to talk about, but again you will talk about the physical trends or the normal trends. We talked about all the groups, that is the electronic configuration first. What is electronic configuration? It is Ns2Np6. Well done. That is octet. So no problem, isn't it? Now what about the ionic size? Ionic sizes, as we go from top to bottom, it increases. The reason is same, that is the number of shells increases. Now, one important thing is electron gain enthalpy. That is, if I write like delta EGH. This is important. What about electron gain enthalpy? Till fluorine, till halogen family you have studied, they are having negative electron gain enthalpy. And the most negative electron gain enthalpy you are seeing is in the halogen family. That is fluorine, chlorine, bromine, iodine, etc. But when you come to the noble gas elements, that is the 18th group elements, they are having a positive value for electron gain enthalpy. That is important. What do you mean by a positive electron gain enthalpy? You know, electron gain enthalpy means the energy required to add an electron to form an anion. So energy will be released. But if you want to add an electron to a stable configuration, listen, you know noble gases are stable. Now it is intact. Nobody is going to disturb them. Now if you want to disturb them by with and adding an electron, what will you having? It is having a positive. So much amount of energy should be given. Not energy will be released. It is endothermic. You have to give so much energy in order to put an electron to a noble gas element. That is why they are called as, they are having a positive value for electron gain enthalpy. Okay, so that is important. Keep in mind. So these are the trends for this 18th group element. Okay. So it's a very, very simple topic. That is, now we will come to the properties. Okay, the chemical properties of the 18th group. Okay, when you talk about the physical properties of 18th group, we can say what? We can say all the gases are monoatomic. See, all are gases. That is again an important thing. Others you can have solids, liquids and gases, but here all are gases, where radon is an exception. Then we want to talk about the physical property. You can say this exists as monoatomic and it has got very, very low boiling point. That is one important point. All these noble gas elements have got a very low boiling point. Why? Because, see, it is already existing as monoatomic. If something has to be happen for two heliums when it comes together, it will have a very weak force, isn't it? There is no strong force because there is no attraction or sharing or gaining or losing. There is only a weak dispersion force is there in this dispersion. You have heard about so many forces, London force, dipole, induced dipole, dispersion, out of which this noble gas elements will have a very weak dispersion force, and just you get an energy to break, it will boil. So it is having a low boiling point. That is the only point to remember in this. It is a monoatomic and it is having a low volatility. Low volatility means what? Very low temperature, it will boil off. And what is the reason for very low temperature? That means this bond, if at all, this bond is happening, the bond is having very, very weak dipole forces. There is no attraction between them. So that is why it is having a low BP, or they are low, high volatile. That is low BP. High volatile and low BP. That is the thing. So now coming to the chemical property. Mainly there are two chemical properties we have to discuss, and you know that. One is, it is having a very, very stable configuration. That is chemical property, nothing much. chemical properties, if you see, one is very stable configuration, that is NS2 NP6 configuration. Yes, and it is having a high ionization potential, isn't it? Why? Because it is having a stable configuration, and it has got 3 points, remember, and it has got a positive electron gain enthalpy. These 3 things you have to remember, that's all. There is no anomalous behavior or something like that in the other groups. Just you note down the 3 points. That's only important. That is, it is having a very stable electronic configuration. That is why they are called as noble gas elements. All are gases, all are monatomic. They are having high IP. You know that because IP is to remove an electron. Already it is an octet, well octet, and helium is a duplet. So no point in that. So it is very high IP and a positive electron gain enthalpy. Positive means you have to give energy. Delta S will be positive. That is endothermic reaction. We have to give energy for accepting an electron. So that's the point. Okay. Now, so whenever the scientists have discovered these noble gas elements, even though they are telling that okay, these noble gases are noble, they won't react, etc., etc. But still some scientists are curious enough to know that whether any noble gas is reactive in nature or any noble gas will react with other element. So these discoveries go on, and finally, you know, right, all the scientists will be behind that. If something is not done, they will be behind that to reach out something new. That is discoveries, right? So till in 1962, whenever each noble gas was discovered, they were having again the discovery that these noble gases react with something else. That was the curiosity. And at last, in 1962, a scientist called as Neil. Actually, his name is Neil Bartlett. Neil Bartlett in 1962 discovered, listen, it's a beautiful story. See, he discovered a compound, or he made a compound like, see, O2 PT F6 minus. Listen carefully. Okay, what he did is, Neil Bartlett in 1962, he prepared a compound like this. That is O2 PT F6. This is a complex having both the ions, a swifter ion, both the ions. And he found its ionization potential, listen, ionization potential as 1175 kilojoule per mole. See, he prepared this compound and he formed a red colored compound. It is specifically saying the color. He prepared a red color compound with this compound where he found the IP for this molecular oxygen as what? 1175 kilojoule per mole. So he found the IP of this molecular hydrogen as 1175 kilojoule per mole. And what was interesting is he found the ionization potential of xenon. See, this is a noble gas, right? He found the IP of this xenon is exactly similar to 1170 kilojoule per mole. What a coincidence. See, so many researchers will be there, no? So from all R&Ds, he come to know that he made a red color compound like this, and then he analyzed that the ionization potential of this molecular oxygen is 1175 kilojoule per mole. And he found out by studying these noble gases, the xenon is having an IP or ionization potential very near or almost same as this oxygen. Then what he did, he prepared the same compound used by xenon. So he prepared a compound Xe, instead of oxygen he put xenon and he got a compound. So then all the calculations went wrong. The scientist whoever said that the noble gas cannot form compounds or is non-reactive, that comes to an end. And he only proposed that the noble gas can, not all, but still the xenon and krypton can make compounds with other elements. Clear? So he made the same compound with xenon as xenon PtF6 Xe plus and PtF6 minus. So this was the first complex, or you can say compound, which was prepared by the Neil Bartlett in 1962 with noble gas elements, or the noble gas element, that is xenon. How he prepared? He prepared by mixing the xenon with the PtF6. Just a direct combination. That is Xe, you got this, he had got the XePtF6 minus. So that was simple, but the research which he made was fantastic. Okay, so that there comes the end of the reactivity, noble reactivity of this noble gas elements. Okay. Then he made more discoveries proving that krypton also can form compounds, but only krypton difluoride. It's very low in preparation. And also some radon. Radon also have a compound like RnF2, but it is not isolated. They have told that okay, it can be there. RnF2 can be prepared, but they are not prepared yet. So it can, only suggesting. But KrF2, very low amount, they are isolating that. So very normal compound for xenons are, you got right? Very normal compounds of xenons are, xenon can react with two elements like fluorine as well as oxygen. Two compounds, the xenon can directly react to form the xenon fluorides and the xenon oxides. Clear? So that is clear. Now we will see some reactions of this, how you can prepare xenon fluorides. Okay, that also direct combination, as you have prepared in interhalogen compounds, by the direct preparation of xenon and fluorine, you can have three types of fluorides. See, there are three types of fluorides. One is Xe plus F2 giving XeF2. This is also, you can very well remember if you write and study like this. Next is Xe plus F2 giving XeF4. And next is Xe plus F2 giving XeF6. See, write like this and study. Direct combination of xenon and fluorine will give you xenon fluorides. Three types of xenon fluorides, that is xenon difluoride, tetrafluoride and hexafluoride. Now there are certain conditions here that you have to study. That is why I told you, just write like this and just make a comparison and study, or connect and study. Okay, I will tell you how it goes. See, xenon and fluorine. First, you can very well remember in equal volumes. First equation, equal volume. Second equation, it will have a ratio of 1:5. Listen. Third, it is having a ratio of 1:20. Just study like that. Equal volume, 1:5 and 1:20. Okay. Next is about the temperature. Now, first one, it is 673 Kelvin. Listen, 673 Kelvin. Next, I will remember the third one, that is 573 Kelvin. See? Or I will start from here. 573 Kelvin, 673 Kelvin and 873 Kelvin. See? It's comparison. It's a gradation. It is very easy to remember like this if you study this. Okay. Now, when you come to the pressure, it is 1 bar, because just remember only one, XeF2, 1, you can remember 1 bar. Here, listen, again I am telling you a trick. You know it is 873 Kelvin, right? Now, it can have 8 bar, the first one. Like that you have to connect it. Somewhere you have to connect it, right? You have in mind. So I connect like this. This is first one. So it is 1 bar. Here I know it is 873, so I put 8 bar. And here you have to just tell it is 60 to 70 bar. Something you have to study, right? So just you make it as, or you just see whether you can connect it with something else. Okay, 60 to 70 bar. So this is the 3 reactions by which you can prepare the 3 halides of xenon fluorides. that is XeF2, XeF4 and XeF6. So you just balance it. Okay. So this is how 3 fluorides are there. Clear? Okay. Now, as you know, this is fluorides, isn't it? XeF4, XeF6, XeF2, all these are fluorides. By the virtue of being fluorides, they are very good fluorinating agents. Very, very important. Since all these are fluorides, they can be used as fluorinating agents. What do you mean by fluorinating agents? Like oxidizing agents. Oxidizing agent means giving oxygen. Likewise, these are able to give out fluorine. That is why they are called as very good fluorinating agents. Just keep in mind, all these fluorides are used for used as fluorinating agents. It can be one of the uses, isn't it? So all these 3 are very good fluorinating agents. Clear? Now we will see some more reactions and structure. Okay, that's all. So we will see some of the reactions. Okay. Now, first is we will see how to make this XeF4. Just a simple reaction. How you make this XeF4. Okay. Now XeF4 can be made, XeF6. XeF6 can be made by treating XeF4 plus O2F2. See, this is one reaction you have to study. For there are 3, right? I will write to the 3 fluorides. That is XeF2, then XeF4 and XeF6. These are the 3 fluorides. Now, if you want to prepare this XeF6, you can have from XeF4. And you know this O2F2 is also a fluorinating agent. See, it is also a fluorinating agent. That is why last session I have told you in oxygen, halogens it will form 2 halides, and remembering OF2 and O2F2. Okay, so this is so it will give oxygen. It will give fluorine, and it forms what? XeF6 plus O2. See, it's a very simple XeF6 plus O2. So this is how you can prepare XeF6. Correct? This is only one reaction. Okay. Now we will see some more reactions. That is, we will have the structure later, but we will have some more reaction. That is the hydrolysis reaction. Before going that, again it acts as a fluorinating agent that we will study. Okay. For example, this xenon fluorides can act as a fluorine donor or a fluorine acceptor. See, I will make you an example. See, if you have XeF2, see, XeF2 plus P, it's fluorine, right? PF5 will give you, listen carefully, when this XeF2 and PF5, you know XeF2 can act as a fluorinating agent, which means it can give out fluorine. So what it will form, listen very carefully, this will form XeF. Okay, XeF, since it is giving, it will have a plus sign and it will give 1 fluorine. So it will become PF6 minus. So see, in a same reaction, listen, in a same reaction, both cation as well as anion forms. That is a this is a fluoride ion donor. This acts as a fluoride ion donor because it gives to the phosphorus pentafluoride. Correct. And here what is this phosphorus pentafluoride? It is a fluorone acceptor. So in the same reaction, you are getting a fluoride donor as well as a fluoride acceptor, making plus and minus in the same compound. That is important. This question it is asked in the board exam. So please study well. Okay. Now one more. XeF4 plus phosphorus, nitrogen, phosphorus, arsenic, antimony, SeF5 will give you, it is a fluoride donor. So it will be Xe, it will be 1. Okay, so it will be HCF3. It's very simple. Plus SB antimony F6 minus. See? So this is a plus sign, minus sign. It will give only one fluorine to form SbF6. Then only it will be stable. The other as such bearing a plus charge. And the last is you can have HCF6 plus HCF6 plus MF. See? HCF6 plus MF will give you here. See, here one is the ulta will happen. What it will give? It will give HCF7 minus and M plus. Metal will be always what? Positive sign. So metal plus and this F will give to this Hc and form this. Here only ulta happens. That ulta means reverse happens. All other this is positive. Xenon is positive and here it is negative. So just keep in mind this reaction. Okay. If you write it, no, so don't worry about all these equations are there, how I will go through it or can I recollect it, no problem. Just you make a logic while writing. Here the logic is what? I told you, this acts as a fluorine donor, this acts as a fluorine acceptor. So something to connect, just have a logic and then do your homework. Homework means not like your homework. Putting all these equations, you just put in a diary. Then one by one you make it clear how you get that equation within you. Okay. So next is the last question, that is a reaction with water. Very, very important. The reaction of xenon with water, you will call it as hydrolysis. Again, since see, even though this is a small part, maybe 1 or 2 pages are there for your textbook, this 18th group. Questions will become, repeated questions are coming from this. Okay. So, the reaction with water. Okay. Now, one important with reaction with water is, or hydrolysis. See, reaction with water means hydrolysis. 2 types of hydrolysis are taking place. Till now, you are only know about hydrolysis. Hydrolysis means reaction with water. But in this hydrolysis also there can be of 2 types. What is it? One is partial hydrolysis and second is complete hydrolysis. From the name itself you know, partial means only some water is reacting, complete means complete water with reaction with water. Okay. So these 2 reactions you have to study. So now we will see the complete hydrolysis of xenon fluoride. Okay. So complete hydrolysis of xenon fluoride and then we will talk about the partial. So first is HCF4 plus water will give you 4 products. Hc plus HF plus O2 plus HCO3. Then next is HCF6. So both these HCF4 and HCF6 on complete hydrolysis, this is 12, okay. So on complete hydrolysis will give you HCO3 as the product. So if I want to say what is the main product, I can say HCO3, okay, HCO3 and HF. So here you will have 4 products, Hc plus HF plus O2 plus HCO3. Here it is HCO3 plus HF. So this is complete hydrolysis. So simply you call it as hydrolysis. Don't tell complete, just simple hydrolysis. Okay, so HCF4 and HCF6. Now if you want again HCF2, if you want to know what is the reaction of HCF2 with water, that is Hc plus HF plus O2. Same as this, but HCO3 is not there. Hc plus HF plus O2, HCO3 is not there. But HCF4 and F6 on hydrolysis means complete, that is default. Complete hydrolysis will give you HCO3 as one of the product, then HF corresponding products are there. Correct. So this is hydrolysis. Now coming to partial hydrolysis. Okay, we will then talk about the partial hydrolysis. Okay, partial hydrolysis. If you say partial hydrolysis is mainly partial hydrolysis is mainly about XeF6, not XeF4, and you don't have to study about XeF4 and XeF2. Only you have to study about the partial hydrolysis of XeF6. Two types of products are getting, that is one XeF6 plus H2, one H2O will give you XeOF4. See, this is the product along with HF. XeF6, you have to only study the partial hydrolysis of XeF6. Complete hydrolysis or hydrolysis, the three you have to study. Out of which XeF6 and F4 has got XeO3 as one of the product. Remember that. Okay. Now XeF6 partial hydrolysis will give you XeOF4 plus HF. And again one more thing, XeF6 plus partial hydrolysis, that is 2H2O, will give you XeO2F2, see, plus HF. So this you have to keep in mind. Two products are obtained, one is XeOF4 and other is XeO2F2. See, XeO2F2 and this is XeO4. So these are the hydrolysis product of xenon fluorides. Okay, you know all the fluorides are fluorinating agents. So this is about the partial hydrolysis, and the other one we discussed was the complete or simple hydrolysis. Okay. Now we will see some of the structures of this xenon compounds. Okay, so we will see some of the structures of the xenon compound. First we will see what is XeF2. XeF2. See, XeF2 is, Xe is in the middle. Now F2. XeF2 is C, F and F. Okay. Now this is trigonal bipyramidal XeF2. So here one lone pair, here one lone pair, and here one lone pair. That is trigonal bipyramidal in the sense it has got triangle and these two. So three equatorial lone pairs and two axial fluorine bond. That is, it is simply a linear structure. If you say XeF2 is, you can write it as XeF, but having three lone pairs in the equatorial position. And in the examination, you have to show this equatorial position lone pair. Very, very important. Only if you draw this like this linear, no, you won't get marks. You have to draw like this. Equatorial, three equatorial positions lone pairs and two axial bonds. Okay, so this is XeF2. Okay. Now we will see what is XeF4. XeF4. Okay, so that is again what? Xe, it will be a square pyramidal. See, 4 fluorine atoms in a square with 2 lone pair of electrons. See, listen, this is square planar. Square planar, because in a square it is having 4 Fe. We are not considering this lone pair. If you are telling the names, this I can say linear, because X and Fe in a same line, linear. This is in a square planar. In a square it is having lone pair, but when you draw the structure, you have to show the lone pair of electrons also. Otherwise you won't get mark. Everybody will make a mistake in XeF2, because simply you are studying it is linear. So you will have a temptation or tendency to write like this. You forget about this lone pair. In the same way, square planar also, square planar is okay because it is in the shape of a square, but it has got pyramid also, square pyramid. Okay. So when you say, you can have square planar structure. Okay. Now comes the XeF6. Listen, XeF6. XeF6 has got a distorted octahedral structure. What is it? Distorted octahedral structure. How you will draw it? Octahedral means you can draw it as Xe. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. This is octahedral structure. Distorted means what? Distorted means this. See, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6. But there is a lone pair of electron also here. So due to this lone pair of electron, this bond will be due to the repulsion of the valence electrons in the fluorine. This lone pair and the fluorine has got some kind of repulsion. So this bond is distorted. Distorted means actually it has to be like this. But due to this repulsion, this is having some angle, that is here. So this is called as the distorted octahedral structure. So this is linear, this is square planar, and this is distorted octahedral. And don't forget it to note down or to draw the lone pair of electrons. 3 lone pair in HCF2, 2 lone pairs in HCF4, and 1 lone pair in HCF6. Correct? And next comes the 2 more structures, that is HCO3. That also in the examinations repeated questions are asked. HCO3 and HCOF4. These 2 structures are there. HCO3 and HCOF4. HCO3 is very simple. HCO3. So 3 double bonds with oxygen and there is 1 lone pair. See, in all the cases in xenon, there is at least 1 lone pair of electrons. Just remember that. So you just connect like that. Then you will be able to know how many lone pairs are in each structure. Okay. Now in HCO4, listen, HCO4 also 1, 2, 3, 4 and 1 as oxygen. 1 oxygen and 1 is lone pair. See. So very this thing to remember that at least in xenon we have studied 3 plus 2, 5 structures of xenon. In all the structures there is at least 1 lone pair of electrons. Then you can connect it how many lone pair of electrons are there in each thing. That is how you connect all these structures. Okay. So this is the structure of HCOF4 and HCO3 is pyramidal. Okay. HCO3 is pyramidal and HCOF4 is square pyramidal. Okay. It is square pyramidal. So these are the structures of the xenon compounds of xenon oxides as well as the xenon fluorides. Okay. So this is about the structure, and you know HCO3 is a colorless explosive solid. Okay. It is a colorless explosive solid, whereas this is a colorless volatile liquid. If you want to know the property, this is a liquid and this is a solid. It's an explosive solid and this is a volatile liquid. So these are the important points to remember in the 18th group. Okay. Now just the last question, uses. You know what are the uses of helium, neon, argon. Krypton and xenon have got no use, but coming to helium, there are so many uses for helium. The first use is you have studied in scuba diving in order to dissolve it in oxygen. It's a dissolution in oxygen because sparingly soluble in this blood. So helium is used in scuba diving. So for dissolving in oxygen, isn't it? Now second is what? Second is helium is used in for low temperatures. Wherever low temperatures are needed, it is used in low temperatures. Okay. Now the third is helium is again used in cryogenic agents. Cryogenic means very low temperature. That is why they are called low temperature cryogenic agents. Okay. For carrying out the various experiments. That is liquid helium. Normally liquid helium just got a 4.2 Kelvin the boiling point. See how much? Very low. I think it is the helium has got the lowest boiling point in all the compounds, elements. Okay, so that is why it is used in cryogenic agents. And also one of the most important point in helium is used in making magnets, superconducting magnets. For the case of MRIs, you know MRI scan, magnetic resonance scan. Okay, in hospitals for diagnostic purpose, and in NMR spectroscopy. You know spectrometers, we studied in spectroscopy, NMR spectroscopy and the MRI in clinical diagnosis. It is used for making superconducting magnets in helium. Okay, so these are some of the uses of helium. And argon, you know, it is used as an inert atmosphere. Argon, okay, it is used as an inert atmosphere. Then argon, it is used in electrical bulbs. Electrical bulbs for having the inert atmosphere. Okay. And these are some of the examples. So go through the uses, at least one or two. And there comes the end of this chapter. This chapter, that is P block. It's a very lengthy one. So go through it, make notes of it, and study thoroughly there. Till then, thank you.